This is Truth Be Told. Hi, and welcome to Truth Be Told. We're actually going to jump right in. We're not playing any games today. We are going to talk about gender roles. Now, this might be a very ooh kind of topic. I know, someone's getting hot over here. But there's a really cool article that I read and I want to share it with you ladies. Gender roles are changing at work and at home, according to the research done at Families and Work Institute in 2008, revised in 2011, so not too long ago. Young men and women alike are challenging traditional gender roles and expecting to share in paid work, as well as tending the household and children, according to the benchmark survey of 3,500 Americans. So I wanted to ask you ladies, first of all, how are you defining gender roles for you personally today, and how do you feel about how it's been evolving since back in the day?
So when we say gender roles, just to kind of break it down a little bit, we're talking about men and women living in a home and how they split responsibilities.
It could also be gender roles in the workplace. So for example, equal pay, titles, positions, things of that nature. Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
it's really interesting. I'm navigating this right now with my husband and have been for a few years because I actually own and started the company that my husband works with me. And so traditionally in my family, I'm the breadwinner, and he does actually a lot of the housework right now. And even if we were to have a child, we've already decided he's kind of going to take on that role of parenting. And I'm going to continue to work. So I don't know. It's not true. I'm the sugar mama. That's right. Travis, my sugar baby.
Yeah, you're the sugar baby.
That's awesome. So for me, my husband and I, we're going on 4 years of being married, and it was just kind of natural for us to kind of land into these roles where it was almost like a 50-50 split. And one of the things my husband told me when we were dating is he was like, I love that you have ambition and you don't just want to be a stay-at-home mom. And there's absolutely nothing with being a stay-at-home mom, but it was just, there was always something in me where I was like, I feel like I would die if I had to stay at home all the time and that was all I did. And so we were attracted to that about each other, is that we both wanted to have our hustles that we're doing, but then we wanted that equal balance at home. So when we're in the kitchen, he has to wash the dishes. I don't do them good enough, I think. But and I dry and put away. And same thing with meals. And that's kind of what we love to do together, though, is it's never just one of us really in the kitchen. We're together working together. And it's not these are your jobs and these are mine. We just kind of, except in the kitchen. But at home, we'll take initiative to do what needs to be done. And I think that's what makes it so nice being married to the man I'm married to, is there's not really that tension of you always do this and I always do that, and we just kind of have this peace about us, and there was never this idea that we needed to fit into a specific block. As a husband, he was just nope, we're just gonna work together and work for peace and cohabitation in a healthy way, not with these expectations or previous ideas from past generations put on us, and that's how we try and fit.
Yeah, be barefoot, in the kitchen, pregnant, cooking, cleaning, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I love being barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen.
I love being I work full-time. My husband works full-time. I have to work full-time in a 3-day space of time. So I also work sometimes after the kids have gone to sleep. So I'm at home with my kids 3 days a week during the week, so Monday to Friday. And then I'm in the office 2 days a week. And so my husband and I, we run the same organization together. We co-lead that together. And one of the ways that we've been finding it interesting. We're from Texas. Well, not from Texas, but we live in Texas.
Is that where your accent's from?
I know, right? I tell everyone I'm from the deep, deep South.
Yeah.
Just like way around that way.
Over an ocean.
Yeah, but so the interesting thing is there's quite a traditional stigma, I think, in the South that gets put on women in business and co-leading. And I found myself in multiple situations where I'm the only woman in the room making decisions. And, you know, sometimes like people like direct the conversation around me and I'm like, excuse me, hi, I'm here. I actually have like experience in business as well. And so I like to just kind of confront it with humor. I think that's the best way to do it. I'm not offended that people have their stigmas when it comes to roles, but I'm like definitely not going to back down at the same time from what I feel like I'm meant to be doing. But I try to use humor to get around it. I'm like, you know, at the end of the day, I don't care what they believe. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. But I try to make them feel comfortable and I try to like shift their perspective as opposed to offend them. So, I mean, kind of that's a really real thing that I'm involved in at the moment in my line of work is trying to get rid of the stigma that it's the man who leads and the woman who stays at home and is the wife, you know. And so I'm like, no, I am the wife. And he's also equally the husband of the boss lady. So
absolutely.
We just try to figure that out. But it's interesting.
That's so cool. I feel like I like to crush boxes that people like to put around things. So, you know, people will have this traditional way in which they'll see something and they'll typecast it and they'll put it in the box and they'll say, this is what it should look like. And like everyone's supposed to be like following it. And I think you have to define for yourself what that looks like. So I think for our home, my husband and I, and just even individually, because we are individuals, but we are also married. And I think there's something to say about that. Well, what do you enjoy doing? And I think it's having that kind of conversation because, you know, there are certain things like I love doing laundry. Like I actually love the smell of it.
Come to my house.
No, I do. I love the smell. Now I've been bad lately with folding my laundry. My husband can attest to it. But normally, like I love it. I find it relaxing. I love the smell of it. You know, and there's certain things that he'll wake up in the morning and he just routine will do the dishes. So I rarely ever do the dishes. It's kind of like what you're saying. We kind of just naturally get drawn to the things that we just either do by routine or that we enjoy doing or that's
or you're good at.
Or you're good at. And it's not really like a thing of this expectation of like, hey woman, you do this. Hey man, you do this. And like we are both business owners and we're both entrepreneurs. And I think the biggest thing, similar thing, I found myself in situations where it's like people will acknowledge my husband, but they won't acknowledge me, or they'll direct conversation or emails to him and I'll be left out of it. And I'm like, but finding myself where I have to sit here and be like, okay, do I need to show my resume? And I quietly step back and say, no, there's nothing that I have to prove of who I am. I just need to show up. But I do feel as a woman, there's a different level of preparation when you're in those situations that then you have to be. Because we don't have necessarily the luxury to kind of just stroll in and just kind of wing it. Because then it's like, oh, she's aloof because she has a child, or, you know, she can't run her business because, you know, there's all these things that I feel like people...
She's on her period.
Yeah, she's on her period. She's emotional. And it's like, no, I'm just being assertive and I'm passionate, you know? And so I just find it really fascinating, these boxes, and I'm big on crushing them.
It's so crazy that you're talking about this because a couple days ago, my team, we were in a team meeting, and somebody had a woman on our team had her chat window up and she was chatting as her husband's name. And my husband, who works with us, he was like, hey, are you, her name's Brittany, she's like, are you on Andrew's account? And she's like, oh yeah, I do this because I get better, like I have way better interactions when I pretend that I'm him. And then I was like, oh my goodness, I actually sign in as Travis a lot when I'm on support chat, like, because we have a web design agency, we do a lot of tech things, you know, we need help sometimes with things. And I noticed that when I sign in as my husband, I get I have a way easier time. I skip past all the introductory steps where people are like, okay, well, have you turned it off and turned it on? I'm like, I am a professional. And then Travis pipes up, we're having a laugh about this. And he's like, Kristen, I sign in as you when I need someone to talk to me. Like I'm a total beginner in tech. I was like, this is astonishing. Like, so I don't know, gender, this has not reached, all the equality has not quite reached tech support yet, but
So I'm curious, based on that little micro experiment you guys have going
Yeah.
on, like,
Yeah.
what is your conclusion based on that? What have you drawn on?
I think my conclusion is that, well, first off, we are like, are we contributing to the problem? You know, so
Yeah.
we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we navigate this? Like, I think it's fun. It was a funny moment that we were all doing it, but we're like, okay. So, you know, one thing someone suggested, I put this out on Instagram. I was like, what should we, you know, how should we address this? And somebody responded, they were like, hey, you know, you should, after they have an interaction with you, you should be like, hey, did you know you're actually speaking with a woman?
Oh, wow.
And see what the reaction's like. But I think in tech, you know, it's helped, and it's actually helped me too, because some people, I work with a lot of women who are like, we love that you're a woman, and we actually love your perspective and your, you know, attention to certain things. So yeah, I in terms of what my take is on it, I don't really know yet, but I do think that things need to change. I mean, obviously skills, you can't show everyone your resume all the time, but those boxes definitely still exist.
Yeah. That's so true.
I think sometimes we have to be careful in our pursuit of equality that we don't make it a gender neutral kind of conversation, because actually, like, we need women to be women in the workforce. Like, we don't need them to be men, and we don't need men to try to be women in the workforce. We actually need, like, both of them playing their part.
That's
and it's
true.
like, sometimes Joaquin, he's like writing an email and then he'll hand it to me and he's like, can you just fluff it up? Like, can you just make it sound nice?
Prettier.
And I'm like, sure, I can do that. And so I know that that's what I add to this, to the organization, is like, I add some of that personable kind of touch to it.
Right.
But if we were trying to be each other, we'd almost cancel each other out. And I think that sometimes, like, we're so fighting for equality that it's actually neutralizing the gender roles.
Absolutely.
You know?
It's so funny because the first word that comes to my mind is maybe a touchy topic. Feminists don't get on me about it, but this word of feminism, right? And it's like, sometimes I feel like it completely diminishes the whole male species as a whole. It's like, in order to be a feminist, we have to completely talk down or put down or, you know, what is it, emasculate?
Yeah.
Is that right? Emasculate men, and I think...
Or shame them.
Yeah. And I feel like being a woman, to me, and being a feminist, to me, is exactly what you're saying. Like, that collaboration hand in hand of men being men, women being women, and being unapologetic about if you are a strong woman, you know? And it's okay if you maybe your approach is a little bit softer, and not looking at one as greater or less than, but just allowing people to flourish in their lane. Like, you know, my husband is great at things that I'm not good at. And so, like, if he is great at it, like, I step back and I let him take the lead because I know it's going to get us to that end result. And it's not this World War III where we're fighting each other trying to be the one, you know, because you never get anywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
I think our goal is to bring the pendulum to the center.
Right.
You know, like, not to the extreme other side.
Yeah.
And so in our pursuit of equality, feminists sometimes swing it all the way to the side. It's like, well, what makes you better than a man that's putting you down if you're putting them down?
Exactly.
I mean, you know, like, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Like, recognize your
You know?
differences, but work together in those differences.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, like, in a home with my husband and I think it does parallel with, like, the workforce and the professional environment, where, like, we all just need to recognize our differences and what we're good at and what we thrive in, and find that center and not focus on what, like, who you are as, like, a woman or as a man, and just focus on success and what you want in your business or in your company and how you want to thrive and grow. And recognizing other people's strengths without looking at them as, like, oh, well, they're, like, a woman in the tech industry. Instead of focusing on, like, who you are as a woman and just that alone, they're looking at you as a whole and, like, what you actually have to bring in a creative way, and, like, how it's different and more effective in, like, lots of approaches.
Jen, and I'm curious because you're a single Pringle. I'm just curious, like, what your views are. Like, yeah, she's available. Guys, please comment below.
Look at these bangs.
You're gonna come through us first before you go to her. Just know that. But like, I just was curious for you, like, not being married yet, and like, what is your perspective on this? And like, maybe what is something that you feel like, hey, this is kind of a conversation I would love to have with someone potentially that I, you know, decide to maybe.
No, definitely. Like, while you guys have been talking, I'm like, I feel like I have more to add to, like, the workplace conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I have, like, so many thoughts about, like, the home situation too.
Yeah.
Because I'm single, I take on all the roles, you know, like in my house, or
Yeah.
I have roommates, so like they do their part. But you know, like for like my own personal life, like I take care of the laundry and my cooking and my cleaning, and it's all on me. And there have definitely been days where I've like, you know, had a meltdown, and I'm like, I just wish I was married, like someone to like help with like this stuff. And then I'm like, okay, that's obviously not the point of marriage. But I've called my sister a million times, and I'm like, I just like, I hate doing laundry, like I hate cooking, and like the thought has like crossed my mind before. I'm like, I enjoy cooking more now, but at times like I don't enjoy cooking. So like I'm like, I hope I find someone that like likes cooking or is like okay with me like not, you know, it's like oh, there's like almost like anxiety of, is it okay that that I'm not like the best cook, you know, like so like the gender role is like in me, even though I'm not playing it. I'm like, oh, am I going to be able to fit this role that someone's expecting?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like really healthy. I feel like I have a lot of healthy married friends around me who kind of like break down those walls. Like my sister is married to someone who like loves cleaning, loves cooking, like loves doing the laundry, and I'm like, okay, like there's other men out there like this. Yeah, and like I just see a lot of married people. Like most of my married friends, like both like they have like the dual income, like they're both working. And I even think back to like growing up. Like I remember my mom would mow the lawn sometimes, and my dad and I would bake together. So it's like those were like gender like roles that you wouldn't kind of expect, you know? And so they had the traditional, my dad worked and my mom stayed at home, and then we left and she went back to work and stuff. So I don't know, I'm like, I feel like what you guys are saying is just so good. It's like whatever you enjoy doing, maybe there's compromise probably in there, which is good to hear. And just like, yeah, it's just good as like a single person to like know what to expect going into marriage, like ever. Like if someone's like desiring that, like what does it actually look like? And if I don't enjoy cooking, like maybe I can get better at it, but hopefully I can find someone who's like, I love to cook.
And there's always room for negotiation, I feel. In the workplace and in the home, you know? And like for me, I think it's like, you know, you see a lot of these things now in the news about women wanting equality even in pay. You know, you'll see jobs or roles in the workplace where the woman has the same exact responsibility, but she's getting paid less. You know, we even see it in the entertainment industry. In films, well, you'll have a female lead and then you'll have a male lead, and the pay is like completely opposite, where the man's pay is up here, the women, you know, and so there's all of these different things. And I feel like, you know, there's nothing wrong with speaking about how you feel, whether it's in a marriage, of, you know, things that you feel comfortable with doing or maybe that you don't feel comfortable with, and having that healthy conversation, as well as in the workplace, and not being afraid to like take a stand and be like, you know what, this is my value, this is what I bring, this is who I am. And
Yeah, I think in the workplace, like, I've definitely had to have, not do digging, but, like, have conversations like, hey, like, am I getting paid equally? And then I think the conversation is always really interesting because it's not just your gender that goes into it, you know? Like, there are times where it's, like, clear gender discrepancy and, like, discrimination, but then it's, like, I've had, like, really great conversations with, most of my managers have been male, of just, like, okay, like, what goes into my pay? You know, it's, like, your, I don't know, your experience, your education, like how long you've been at the company, like, and like also I think men, maybe I'm like wrong with this, but I think statistically, like when they get offered a job, like they're better at negotiating it.
They ask for more. Statistically, they ask. I mean, I see it a lot.
I'm
in
not
business
negating
too.
like the actual discrimination that's out there.
No.
But I think that it's important to like have the conversation of it's not always just male or female in the workplace. But I think it's good to have the conversation and to get the clarity that you need. Because like I've walked around and I'm like, I have peers that are male and I'm like, I just want to know that I'm like in the range, getting paid like correctly, that it's fair, that like, so to just have that conversation, like to be empowered as a woman, like I get to have this conversation and like you get to tell me what all is going into my salary.
That's an interesting thing that you brought up about the negotiation thing. Have you guys ever been in a situation where you were afraid to negotiate your salary? And what did you do? Like, I'm just curious.
Well, I know that for years, like I mean, I've been a web designer for 8 years now, and for a long time I wasn't raising my rates. And then as soon as my husband joined my team, he's like, hey, so we're going to triple your rates. And I was like, I don't know, that feels, I don't know if I'm deserving of it. And this was like a year ago, PS, guys. And it was like, I had such a dilemma over it. And the minute I did it, like, my business income tripled and everyone said yes. And no one batted an eyelash. And it was amazing. It was just that my husband had the cojones to say, you know what? We need to do something about this. And
what was what do you think there was a fear behind it, or what was it that you think was
Or
bothering
like a
you?
self-worth thing.
Yeah.
Where you're
I
like,
think
I don't know if it's worth what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think, you know, I know that my work is valuable. I think there's fear in, like, what I do is definitely for the money, but at the same time, I do have a certain sense of artistry attached to it, ego attached to it, and sometimes I fear rejection. Like, oh no, I'm not going to get a job, and if I bid it too high or something like that. So
That's real.
It is real, and also
real.
pricing against other women in my industry. But the reality is, a lot of people haven't been in my industry as long as I have, and so it's.
You gotta go with the big picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And being brave.
I think like something that women are really not great at is like letting their emotions become their master instead of letting their emotions serve them. And so sometimes we walk into those situations and like we get emotionally either overwhelmed, or our emotions have like a big part to play in it. Like even the emotion of like rejection, like that has something like the emotion of, oh, do I feel worthy to do this? Like, we have like these things going around in our head that we sometimes like let them dictate like how we respond and like respond to things. And so I think sometimes learning like, you know, emotions are great and we can use them to our advantage, but like they shouldn't guide our business decisions. And sometimes like I'm a lot more strict in business than my husband is, and he'll be like, oh, but what about this? And I'm like, no, this is business. Like I take emotion out of business. And unfortunately, in my line of work, I can't really do that. But
I'm going to send you some contracts.
but then there's the opposite where he will like be like, you just need to tell them why they're not getting a promotion. It's because they're doing this, 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 and this wrong. And I'm like, can you have that conversation? That's really scary for me. So like, you know, again, I think that's where it balances each other out.
So
But like,
good.
I have to kind of learn, all right, business hat on, like actually emotions, I can't let them control me in this, in the workforce. Like I just can't. And we actually, I mean, I don't know if there's any studies being done, but I would say that a lot of men, one of the things that they would use against women in the workplace, one of their greatest arguments is that they're too emotional. We always get like, you know, that always comes back on us, is that we're too emotional. And so sometimes we actually just need to learn how to take our emotions out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So, my suggestion or recommendation in growing in boldness, because I used to be like way more timid, way more like emotion led, is get a job in sales. Because that will make you grow.
That is true. That's so
Because
true.
rejection sucks, but it happens. And I think when as soon as you realize that's okay, and to like ask for that sale, like such a salesy term, but like ask for that sale and be bold. And do you know what? If like someone's not interested in what you have to offer, that's fine.
Yeah.
And like my husband, he's in sales as well, and he's always like, well, every no leads to a yes. And so it's like, just walk away from that and be like, okay, like I know I can do better, but their no isn't over me as a person, and that's not my identity, and walk away from that.
Yeah.
So like, you want to grow in boldness and asking for things, demanding things in a way, like go to sales, because it'll scare you, but it will grow you.
But as soon as you get that one, I feel like they're, for me in sales specifically, like or in asking for what I'm worth, like a lot of times it just takes one person saying yes to be like, oh, that's an option for me. I can go higher.
can do
you know, it's like a ladder. You're like, oh, I can get away with that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's so true.
It's definitely true. Yeah. I work in network marketing. Don't be scared.
So we're gonna sell you something right now. Actually, pop up on the screen.
But it's so true. Like, it's really scary to be like, hey, this is what I think it's scary to ever be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. If it's new, and to like claim it and to be like, oh, this is what I believe in. I remember like when I got that first sale and I was like, oh my gosh, I can do it. And I've gotten a ton of no's since then, and it's like, hey, that's okay, that's great, like this isn't for you, and this is for me. And it's like finding, I think sales is like, there's so much passion behind it too, so it's like finding people that are going to pair with that passion. And And so, yeah, it's like scary, but it definitely kind of pulls out that rejection sting that
Builds that
like,
boldness.
Yeah, has like that like hold of you. You're like, it's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I agree with you when you were saying, like, for me and my husband talk about this a lot because we work a lot together. So I do not like when he calls me babe in like work mode. Like he'll be like babe, and there'll be other men like involved in the conversation, and I feel like those things kind of tap into like our personal private life as opposed to keeping it professional.
Yeah.
So like when we work together, I really like a fine line of like we're professionals here. So I don't like the like little sweet little isms, and I'm definitely kind of more like you. I'm like, hey, this is business. This is not emotion. Like this is what we have to do, you know? And sometimes he finds it a little tougher, but again, it's same like you were saying, that nice balance of there are things that he's better at or that he doesn't have a trouble just being like putting his foot down on where I might not, but I definitely feel like emotions and business do not mix well together.
Yeah.
I think they are a cocktail for disaster. So the more we can control that and just really look at the facts, and I think men are really good at just looking overall at information and saying like, these are the facts. This is my conclusion based on the facts. And I think the more that we can think in that perspective, it will really set us apart from, you know, maybe necessarily going to our natural lean of like emotion or anything like
I
that.
read something, I heard something, there's a woman named Patrice King, who's like, I think that's her name. She's a financial expert. And she was talking about this thing called a brag book that she has women in her community do. So she coaches women on finances and asking for what they're worth and like a little bit of, you know, professional things we were talking about. And she recommends taking a brag book. It's almost basically like a resume, or anytime that someone gives you a great review, a great testimonial, when you achieve something, and putting it in this like one scrapbook so that you're like, every time that you're kind of like, okay, is this for me? Or like, you need to seize an opportunity that you're fearful of to go do that. So
it's like encouraging words.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
just encouraging words. I
Yeah.
love that. That
in a professional way.
is- yeah.
Just be like,
I'm gonna do that for every way.
Guys, we need a brag book. Can we like? Is that like interactive? Like, is that
like
like
a
write
brag
any
book
like a
for
yearbook? Like a brag.
I know, I'll brag on you guys all day. Jen is so great.
That is so awesome. Well, you guys, we want to hear a little bit about what you think about gender roles in your home, in your workplace. Have you guys had that conversation with your bosses, with your coworkers, with your husband? We want to hear about those situations, and maybe what is some advice you have for people that are struggling with negotiating different roles in the workplace or at home? We want to hear from you. Please comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and like our channel. If you hit the notification button, you will know when our next video is coming out. Also, follow us on Instagram. We would love to hear from you guys on there as well. And we will see you guys next time.